Okay, I'll say it. Blake Lively's sexual harassment complaint does not excuse her disgusting behavior. Blake Lively's disgusting behavior does not disprove Justin Baldoni's alleged disgusting behavior. They can both be shitty people at the same time.
It kind of makes them both look bad. I don't come out of this going, oh, Blake, she really is a saint. I had her wrong all along. You know what I mean?
I mean, when you read her side, yeah, a lot of those things were absolutely inappropriate.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you look at the interviews, like that kind of, I felt like, is what got her canceled, was all these old interviews that resurfaced of her kind of seeming like nasty.
She doesn't seem nice and fun. And
no. And, you know, even if, you know, what she says, like, his PR team, Crisis PR, they were the ones getting all this going. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Like, the internet will find dirt on you. You know what I mean? The internet was the one that, you know, all these trolls and stuff were the ones that kind of found out these old interviews and was like, oh, this is not that great of her.
They are precisely right. The internet destroys reputations left and right for fun. Many celebs have been trolled to death by organic internet hate campaigns, which was the case with Blake. It's one of the worst sides of social media, and I don't always agree with the cancelings, and I was actually a huge fan of Blake before all of this popped off, but the internet was not wrong about Blake on this one. J-Lo was literally canceled for similar cringe behavior shortly before Blake, and J-Lo never recovered.
I like taking my hair out like this. It reminds me like when I was 16 in the Bronx, running up and down the block. A crazy little girl who used to be wild and no limits, all dreams and
like, she's over here trying to rep her set so fucking hard, and they don't even claim you like that. Like, and Jenny, like, she was obviously more poppin' back in the early 2000s. Now social media is out and everybody's clocking her teeth. They don't even fuck with you over there.
However, J-Lo didn't have on-set complaints to leverage in a sexual harassment lawsuit at her convenience, thereby victimizing herself and scapegoating a co-star for her historically awful behavior. Let's not get lost in the weeds of Blake and her PR team's smoke and mirrors. She's still a loser who's deserving of every bit of criticism she faced for her awful, self-absorbed, privileged, opportunistic behavior, and her dismissiveness towards the subject of domestic violence while exploiting it for profit, regardless of what Justin and his team did or didn't do. I am not defending Justin Baldoni here for a second, because the allegations against him are deplorable and should be taken seriously and thoroughly investigated, but that does not magically let Blake off the hook. During my research for this video, I've been revisiting videos of people criticizing Blake for her awful behavior, and some of the newer comments are like, "This aged horribly," or "This aged like milk." Low IQ buffoons who are easily swayed by PR propaganda and who don't realize they're simply buying into a new media orchestrated narrative and who can't distinguish for themselves what's really going on here. They now want to weaponize this warped idea of feminism that the internet groupthink monster often employs, insisting that you must believe all women and that when a woman claims to have been abused in any way by a man, you must instantly see her wholly as a victim. However, that's not how reality works. Certainly, if we apply that rule here that we are to believe all women, wouldn't that then apply to Blake as well, who has openly supported the disgusting freak Woody Allen, who was accused of molesting his adoptive daughter, Dylan Farrell, when she was 7 years old, and who, despite the court's ruling against her mother at the time, still holds to her story as an adult that Woody Allen indeed molested her. Not to mention, even the judge at the time admitted that Woody Allen had an inappropriate relationship with Dylan. That's a direct quote, which consisted of an obsessive fixation on her. That sounds like a pedophile to me. However, the judge then arbitrarily decided it wasn't sexual in nature, which is just disingenuous bullshit. Nonetheless, Woody Allen was reportedly still in therapeutic treatment for 2 years for this inappropriate fixation he had on this 7-year-old. And according to Mia Farrow, the family adopted a general rule that Woody was not allowed to be alone with Dylan ever. Not to mention, Dylan's allegations against Woody totally have validity because he would later go on to marry his stepdaughter. Soon-Yi, who was Mia Farrow's legally adopted daughter at the time she and Woody were married. That would make her Woody Allen's stepdaughter. He literally cheated on Mia Farrow with his stepdaughter, who he had been around as a paternal-like figure since she was 9 years old in 1979, when he and Mia first met. And he groomed her and then took nude photos of her when she was 21 years old. And Mia found them and discovered he had been having a sexual relationship with her fucking daughter, who he later married despite being 35 years older than her. And with Dylan's allegations, and even the judge saying he had an inappropriate fixation on Dylan when she was 7 years old, it's not difficult to believe he was fucking Soon-Yi long before she was 21 years old and he took those nude photos of her. Blake openly supported this reprehensible creep, Woody Allen, after all this information had long since been publicized, and in her privileged state chose to remain ignorant about the details of these allegations surrounding Woody when all of this information was made publicly available, so that she could still work with him on Cafe Society, like many other despicable celebs who continue to work with and praise him, just like they did convicted child rapist Roman Polanski, who won an Oscar and received a standing ovation at the Oscars. Hollywood is a truly evil place. Not only that, Blake chose to ignore Dylan Farrell's allegations of Woody Allen molesting her when she was 7 years old, and even went so far as to proclaim on her large platform that Woody Allen was empowering to women in 2016, whereas he is demonstratively the exact opposite of that. He objectifies women and has a long track record of sexualizing and engaging in romantic relationships with underage girls. This is factual, and the way he depicts women in his movies is anything but empowering. But I digress. I'll discuss this more in my separate video on Mia and Woody coming soon. But now Blake wants people to see her as a victim, despite her long-storied, awful behavior, because she has made allegations against her co-star, which were not concerning enough to stop production and denounce the film, but they are now suddenly concerning enough to use as a convenient tool to save her reputation. Here's a quick look at the behavior that really got her canceled, that she would like to ignore and not take accountability for, just like she ignored the fact that she got married at a slave plantation with a row of slave homes still standing on the property called Slave Street. Do you honestly believe they weren't fully aware of this plantation's history? It's literally a southern venue called Boone Plantation in South Carolina. Let's be fucking serious for 1 second, please. And we know Blake obviously was aware of the slave history in the pre-Civil War South, because she has a literal antebellum era fetish that she and her team waxed poetic about in a project she would launch in 2014. Yes, despite her and Ryan feigning ignorance that they knew their wedding venue was a slave plantation, Blake actually has a sinister and well-documented history of romanticizing the Southern antebellum period, meaning the time before the Civil War, when slavery was a thriving institution in the Southern states and the wives of sadistic slave owners wore nice clothes and were distinguished ornaments of high society. Antebellum. Ante means before, bellum means war. She did this in an old, failed lifestyle blog she used to run called The Preserve, which, by the way, she does not regret in the least and has expressed as much as recently as 2023. It is beyond clear Blake has never had to take accountability for anything. Everyone leaps to bail her out and pretends she's a good person just because she's a female. That's precisely why she has gotten away with acting the way she does.
First of all, congrats on your little bump.
Congrats on your little bump.
Blake was nearly 8 months pregnant and had recently announced the pregnancy to the public, and the interviewer was simply being nice and congratulated her in a cutesy way, and Blake got offended because someone mentioned her pregnancy bump. That's not offensive if you're literally fucking pregnant, but it was offensive to say back to this reporter, who is clearly not pregnant, congratulations on your bump, which is actually fat shaming her. Then, when the interviewer innocently asked about the fashion in the film, because it's a freaking period film, so it has an interesting wardrobe, Blake got offended yet again. Why is she so sensitive? She got offended and tried to have a fake feminist moment by demeaning this woman, the interviewer, for daring to ask them about the wardrobe just because they're women. Meanwhile, this is Blake in multiple interviews making a huge deal out of the wardrobes for her movies and out of her wardrobes on red carpets.
This is Britney's Versace dress, 2002, the
butterfly dress, and my hair care company, Blake Brown. My goodness gracious!
There's these great Louboutins that are also a close-up on them when we're dancing in the bar. Those are mine. I have a few of my husband's shirts and socks randomly in the movie. I have some of Gigi Hadid's sweaters in the movie.
Wardrobe is always the way that I enter a character. I'm a very shy person, so if I look a certain way, then I can escape into that. Like even stuff today, I don't dress like this in real life, but like I'm having to like do interviews and talk, so I'm gonna wear like a crazy pattern. I mean, honestly, the way that I get into a character is through their style.
She then proceeded to commandeer the entire interview from this woman, rudely only speaking to her co-star for an extended period of time.
His wardrobe was
I know.
gorgeous.
He's
Those
so
high-waisted pants.
He's so great.
I wish men
And
wore
sorry,
high-waisted pants
too.
like
I
that
know.
still.
Me
Or
too.
the father with his tank top in
Oh,
bed.
it's so good.
Just like, it's just like
Did you
that.
catch
You could feel
the
it.
tablecloth on the light in the Italian restaurant when they eat spaghetti?
I didn't
and
notice that. No.
There's
So
so
I
much
feel like-
warmth of everything, you know.
Yeah, it's not just the women that have the clothes.
But
I feel like the women
Victoria-
get the conversation, but it's like
Yeah.
every detail with everybody.
But yeah,
It's so,
it was
so
amazing
beautiful.
to look at.
Steve's
And then to see
white
it,
suits.
Yes.
And then you notice in LA, like everybody's in cream colors, and all the men are wearing like white and cream, and then you get to New
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. I'm gonna put it here because it doesn't go with my outfit, but I will wear it later. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm gonna put it on.
If anybody has had that real life experience, I can imagine how hard it would be to imagine their experience being in a romance novel. To them, I would just offer that that we were very intentional in the making of this movie.
This is your night, mister.
No, this isn't my night. This is a night for all the women who we made this movie for. This is a night for Blake. This is a night for Colleen.
Any women that see it, if they relate to Lily in any way, that they feel empowered and they feel seen and they feel heard and they find some hope to take steps to change their life.
Magnolia Pearl.
Oh, yeah.
Those are my real life jeans.
Yeah, a lot of that is like your stuff.
The boots were mine.
I love those
There's these great Louboutins that are also a close-up on them when we're dancing in the bar. Those are mine. I have some of Gigi Hadid's sweaters in the movie. I want this one because all the like really cool patterns and whatnot.
And they're going to want to tell you about their life. So if someone understands the themes of this movie, comes across you in public, and they want to really talk to you, what's the best way for them to be able to talk to you about this? How would you recommend they go about it?
Like asking for like my address or my phone number or like my location share. Or I could just location share you. And It Ends With Us is in theaters now. So grab your friends, wear your florals, and head out. This is Brittany's Versace dress, 2002, the butterfly dress. And my hair care company, Blake Brown. My goodness gracious.
Not only did she very untastefully use the movie to promote her alcohol brand by hosting this cutesy alcohol party with specialty drinks such as Ryle You Wait and It Ends With Buzz. Ryle being the abuser of the story. Just because you have a brand does not necessarily mean it's a wonderful idea to promote it at every single chance possible. The tone deafness just completely left so many in shock.
They're doing exactly the same thing to Justin Baldoni as they're accusing him of doing to her. Again, keeping the sexual harassment case out of this. But this is Hollywood at its worst. What I also find pretty disturbing about this whole thing is that people are saying that I take other women down and I'm hating on other women. And while you're doing that, you're hating on me. And I am also a woman. To me, I feel it's pretty obvious that if a woman is behaving badly, she needs to take responsibility for that. Same goes for a man. And I feel like now that this new sexual harassment allegation has come out, everyone's just forgotten what this was really about. And this hate was created by Blake Lively's bad behavior and domestic violence victims coming out, and they were very disappointed in the way she promoted her movie. And now that seems to be completely forgotten. It's crazy how easy it is to convince people to go in another direction and pick the other narrative.
I don't understand why the internet has such trouble grasping nuance. It goes from one extreme to the next. Like there always has to be a clear-cut villain and good guy. Just like in the Amber Heard versus Johnny Depp case. They just don't understand nuance, that two people can be toxic in a relationship, and that some allegations are proven and that some are not proven, and that you can't just go with your gut feeling, or you can't just go with wanting to defend women because they're women, or wanting to vilify men because they're men. The burden of proof always lies with the accuser. And in this case, the burden of proof has not been satisfied by Blake and her team with regard to the sexual harassment claims, nor with regard to the smear campaign in specific. I've been closely watching the dumpster fire that is the press tour for the film It Ends With Us for a while now. And as someone who was a major Blake Lively fan and grew up watching her in movies and shows, I was quite disillusioned seeing this different side of her in these interviews. She was far more full of herself than I would have ever guessed. I suppose that's because I never really paid much attention to her true personality, as I'd only enjoyed her in different roles and that was about it. So when these clips began surfacing of Blake Lively during the press tour for It Ends With Us, I was just in awe of how out of touch and full of herself she is. It was to the point where it almost seemed like she was playing an obnoxious, satirical character, but she wasn't. She was being her authentic self. That's where the issue with her lawsuit against co-star and the director of It Ends With Us, Justin Baldoni, comes into play, for me at least. I don't think things are as cut and dry as Blake's team would like us to believe, with Justin and his company being entirely at fault for her public downfall as a result of a smear campaign he launched in retaliation of her speaking up about HR complaints on set. That is how her lawyers framed Blake's downfall, but that is not at all how her downfall played out from what I can see. This video will not be evaluating the validity or veracity of her claims about sexual harassment because we do not have all the facts on that. And as far as I can see, her claims have yet to be corroborated by other cast members in specific. And the cast members that have naturally come out to support her are operating from the perspective that the smear campaign against her was horrible and that they support her in speaking out as anyone would. Also, Justin and his team made it clear that they had differing opinions and perspectives from her take on things at that meeting, and only agreed that some of her demands were reasonable and necessary for the benefit of all involved. And they essentially did this to continue and conclude the filming. That language was purposefully vague and didn't bother to refute or agree with anything she specifically laid out in that meeting. So that's what I'm waiting to hear specifics on when Justin files his countersuit, which will reportedly take place at the beginning of the new year. So for now, I want to stick to discussing Blake's claims, and mostly with regard to the alleged smear campaign that she feels is responsible for her downfall. What's being missed here is that Justin and his team categorically deny Blake's allegations with regard to the smear campaign in no uncertain terms. And they have actually alleged that Blake and her team started the PR war by releasing negative stories about him first, long before Justin sought defensive representation and began trying to play offense. And there is validity to that, because this all started with allegations made about Justin on set that had been leaked to the public before the film was ever released. I specifically remember that. It began with rumors of an on-set feud with Blake being overbearing because of photos and videos of them filming that were made public, with Blake seeming to be directing Justin, which actually corroborates what he said took place. He said that he let her take over certain scenes and listen to her perspective on how things should go. It also is in line with the behavior we've seen of Blake directing her other co-stars on the red carpet and being a quote-unquote crown straightener, some people have dubbed her. For now, I think we can agree there is much more to this story than Blake and her team's framing. That doesn't mean that her claims don't have validity, because some of them obviously do based on the text messages, but I'm convinced we need to hear more information before any of us can draw hard conclusions. Because if what Justin and his team will reportedly argue is true, that Blake's team smeared him first, then that fact, in addition to the fact that her downfall was mostly propelled by her own off-putting and tone-deaf behavior, would dramatically turn the tables in this PR war yet again. Also, I'm still awaiting Justin Baldoni's team's full response to claims of sexual harassment, since they gave a generalized denial of all of her allegations in a statement following the New York Times article. Their response to those specific allegations will be critical to understanding what took place on that set. With that being said, I would like to focus on Blake's downfall and what specifically caused it from my perspective and my experience in dealing with this drama as an individual who was not influenced by so-called astroturfed comments authored by a secret smear campaign. Rather, I was influenced by seriously off-putting behavior in videos of Blake herself. One day earlier this year, rumors leaked from set during filming that there was some tension between the two leads due to creative differences. There were rumors that Blake said Justin had kissed her too long in a scene and that he had inquired about her weight, which was incredibly traumatic for her, apparently. This is the first rumor I remember hearing about anything negative coming out of the set. And while that would be an uncomfortable question, one about your weight, to have lobbed at you out of the blue, it was apparently asked for logistical reasons, meaning because Justin had back problems and likely couldn't lift beyond a certain weight, whereas the scene was requiring him to lift or maneuver Blake in a way that might compromise his back injury. And as gorgeous as she is, Blake is not a petite woman. She's literally 5'10", which is very tall for a woman, and is only 2 inches away from being 6 feet. She's actually taller than the average man of the United States. For that reason, I believe we can give Justin the benefit of the doubt on that claim. However, Blake claims that no such scene existed in which he needed to lift her, and even as someone who watched this snooze fest of a film, I couldn't even say whether that was true or not. I was so bored while watching this movie, I can't even remember half of it. Nothing interesting happened for at least an hour into the film. By the time something interesting did happen, it was so rapid and so squished into the last quarter of the movie, I just did not care anymore. As far as the accusation that Justin kissed Blake too long in a scene, this is where things become complicated, because logistically, intimate scenes in movies should be coordinated and performed in the presence of an intimacy coordinator to avoid just such incidents. Apparently, there was not only one, but two on set, Chelsea Carey and Lizzie Talbot, so they would have been present so that anyone experiencing discomfort during these scenes could express it and that discomfort could be rectified. Baldoni told Harper's Bazaar India, "We knew from the very beginning that there was no way we could do this movie without intimacy coordinators, as well as stunt coordinators. It was so important to have them on set, not just so we could all feel safe, but because they were also incredible collaborators with wonderful ideas that really elevated the film. Having them on set and always in my eye line was invaluable, because at any point I could look at one of them for a thumbs up, or we'd work on another approach together. They were such an important and integral part of our process." So I find it odd that Justin is saying they knew they needed intimacy coordinators from the very beginning, and yet Blake claimed in her complaint that they only employed an intimacy coordinator after she made demands in that all-hands-on-deck meeting following the writer's strike. This is one of those things we simply need clarified by Justin's team. When exactly were the intimacy coordinators brought on? That would solve that issue right away. If Blake wanted Justin and the crew to abide by certain stipulations that are laid out, I believe, in SAG guidelines for acting, why weren't they implemented from the beginning? Why didn't she negotiate this in her contract? Why is this something that had to happen mid-filming? I don't understand that. If she felt that strongly about these very specific guidelines being followed, why wasn't it negotiated from the beginning? She's not like a newbie actress, and it's not like she had no power on set. She was a producer on the film and talks all the time about how much power she exercised on that set.
Honestly, the work that I did on screen was easier than the work that I did off screen in this movie because of all that went into it.
So why weren't these stipulations or guidelines followed from the very beginning? That's my question. That's something else we need to see cleared up in Justin's countersuit. This brings me to my next point. The dynamics on this movie set were odd and a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, because firstly, you have a book that is written by a problematic author who seems to invite criticism for romanticizing abuse. I'm not sure how true that claim is because I've never read any of her work and never will, but oddly, I discovered her by running across criticism of her work on Instagram, and she always seems to be a punchline whenever commenters are referencing bad writing. But then the next layer of complication that that's added in here is that the two leads for this movie are also receiving credits for off-camera contributions as director and producer, which is certainly not uncommon in a film, but it definitely goes a long way in making the working dynamics and the chain of command rather convoluted, because both filmmakers and producers like to exercise creative control over many aspects of a film. And this naturally led to Blake and Justin clashing over trying to have both their visions realized for the film, even down to the editing and post-production. Then you bring in another and rather unneeded complication to the working dynamic by Blake's husband, Ryan Reynolds, actively exercising creative control over the film, which is a huge no for me.
We help each other, we work together so much. So the iconic rooftop scene in this movie, my husband actually wrote it. Nobody knows that, but you now.
Anonymous sources told The Hollywood Reporter there was a fracture in post-production and that Blake had commissioned her own cut of the film from editor Shane Reed, who was the editor for her husband Ryan Reynolds' film Deadpool and Wolverine. So again, creative control issues directly as a result of Blake's overlapping roles in this film with her husband's connections. And I heard a couple of people say that they were trying to drum up marketing buzz, kind of like the Barbie and Oppenheimer marketing campaign. They were trying to do that with Deadpool and this film, which is just a huge no because of the serious subject matter of this film.
Thank you, Brandon. I love the movie.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Okay.
Oh, God.
This is cool. It's not every day the husband gets to interview his wife's love interest in a film. It's kind of crazy.
I don't remember seeing this on the schedule.
Dive in, shall we? So I saw you posing in a photo with Mrs. Reynolds, and I'm sorry, what do you call her? Do you guys have a nickname or something? Okay, no, just so it's Mrs. Okay. Anyway, I saw this photo. It was very suggestive. So I got it right here. I'm gonna get right to it.
Like, what even is this? Why is he here? Why is he making a joke about a co-star being romantic with his wife when he knows in his head behind the scenes she was supposedly sexually harassed on this set? Does this seem like a joke a man would make if his wife was sexually harassed on a set? Why was he rewriting pivotal scenes? Why would they continue to film the project, and why would they market it so gleefully together, opportunistically promoting their other brands and associating those brands with a film made by her on-set abusers? And if the things she is alleging are true, they would have been more than enough to get her out of her contract without issue. So saying she was stuck in a contract does not fly here. If she was truly being sexually harassed, why would she want anything to do with this film or its marketing? Why wouldn't she denounce it and the filmmaker as soon as the film came out? Why would she gaslight the public into supporting this movie, which was made by her abusers and which would profit sexual predators and men who sought to destroy her reputation? Or is it the case that the sexual harassment claims are only being played up now as a PR chess move because she ruined her own reputation and needed a convenient scapegoat? So this all sounds like a nightmare environment behind the scenes. Now you have a situation where a so-called power couple in Hollywood is convinced that they're running the show and likely butting heads with the filmmaker every step of the way. And Justin's wife, who is an actress, also made a brief appearance as a doctor in the film. Now, a friend or family member making a cameo in a film is not unheard of, and I don't think it would have been nearly as problematic as Justin's wife trying to rewrite pivotal scenes or weigh in on the creative direction of the film like Ryan Reynolds apparently did. Blake herself admitted how heavy a hand she played in the creative direction of the film as the producer. She said it was much more than her contributions as the lead actress, which spells trouble. Producers are not directors. But something tells me Blake didn't quite understand that. Something that caught my eye and corroborates this for me is a remark Justin made long before the drama popped off publicly, and he made this when asked whether he would be willing to do the sequel to the movie. He is very apparently uncomfortable answering the question and jokes that he needs a vacation, which means filming this movie was not a walk in the park for him. And then he alludes to the fact that he thinks Blake is ready to direct, which implies she was being overbearing overbearing during the filming of this movie and needs to simply be the director next time. There have been anonymous insiders from the film vilifying both Blake and Justin, saying Justin made the set uncomfortable to work on, or that he was chauvinistic, or saying that Blake was being overbearing, but I think the truth lies someplace in the middle. I believe what this one source told US Weekly is a little closer to what actually took place, and now different narratives are being played up so that either person can vilify the other in a massive and vicious PR war. The source said there were two camps on the film, Team Blake and Team Justin. This creative struggle set the tone for the negative experience behind the scenes and grew into them not speaking anymore. The source claimed Justin felt hurt and sidelined when Blake made various decisions about the movie, like script and wardrobe changes, often without consulting Justin or his team. It makes perfect sense that a Team Blake and Team Justin developed as a result of creative differences. And with Blake accusing Justin of kissing her too long and asking about her weight, it wouldn't surprise me that other members of the cast would take her side and distance themselves from Justin. The question remains though, were those allegations true? The evidence for them, as of yet, is non-existent, and both incidents can actually logistically be explained away, whereas those two things Blake was accused of here, like changing her own wardrobe and changing the script by allowing her husband to write the rooftop scene, are things that she factually admitted to doing herself. So they aren't just baseless or unsubstantiated allegations, they are things that Blake admitted to doing herself, which could be seen as problematic. Blake was also dragged by the public for her frumpy, unappealing style in this movie, and the criticism was aimed at her in particular because she admitted she was in charge of her own wardrobe for the film. This was reportedly due to the fact that she had recently given birth and was potentially insecure about her postpartum body, hence her being so offended by Justin allegedly inquiring about her weight. Regardless of the reasoning behind her style choices, the public was generally not fond of her wardrobe in this film, and I have to admit it was distractingly bad. And even more proof of how Blake was enforcing her vision onto every aspect of this film is her dressing the actress who played the younger version of herself in her own personal clothes for a red carpet. That seems really strange to me. Furthermore, what we do know is that Blake has exhibited many narcissistic personality traits in not only the insufferable It Ends With Us press tour, but also in past interviews with other co-stars, and also while interacting with journalists. Her narcissistic tendencies have been proven historically are important because we know narcissistic personality types tend to lie and be quite manipulative. So it wouldn't surprise me if whatever she is telling those around her about Justin would spark outrage in those people and influence them to distance themselves from Justin. That brings me to the press tour, where Blake and Justin had two totally different approaches to how they marketed this film. Blake was criticized, and rightfully so, for marketing the film in a very tacky way. The film is about domestic violence and abusive relationships, so it does not deal with lighthearted, easygoing subject matter. It's a very grave subject that is affecting a great deal of women across the world and often results in the deaths of those victims. This is a matter that should be treated with the proper gravity and respect each and every step of the way, or it shouldn't be touched at all. Blake came off as uncaring and insensitive and opportunistic during the marketing of this film. That cannot be denied. She essentially was treating it like just your typical rom-com and encouraging girls to get together with their friends and wear florals and go see this movie with zero mention of its potentially triggering context and scenes. She also at one point promoted her cosmetic products during the promo and answered questions about domestic violence with literal jokes or in a dismissive, facetious manner. How can everybody not see what's going on here? Blake and her team are trying to pull a sleight of hand where they're trying to blame Justin for Blake's public backlash during the marketing of this movie. Here's why that doesn't work. Blake is on camera being an insufferable, self-absorbed, privileged idiot to many others in many different interviews, many of which are before this project ever began. In fact, what you also see in these diabolical texts from Justin's publicist is them marveling at how well the PR war is going for them without much effort because the fans are taking her down by themselves. And rightfully so. Blake's excuse for this is to once more blame Justin because in contrast, during interviews, he looked and sounded great by focusing on sharing survivor stories and empowering women, which is his brand, by the way. Blake is making his far more appropriate approach out to be a part of some scheme to smear her, and for argument's sake, let's say she's right. Let's say Justin did orchestrate his marketing to make hers look bad. The problem is, Justin has a long history of espousing these sorts of male feminist, super woke views. You could not find a male more woke than Justin Baldoni, to the point where he's quite cringe at times. Even if the agreement by the cast was to market this film in a lighthearted manner, which is idiotic and disingenuous because of the nature of the subject matter of this film, then could they really not anticipate that this approach wouldn't have gone well with the fans themselves, regardless of how Justin chose to deviate from the marketing plan and focus more on the seriousness of the subject matter? By not focusing on the gravity of domestic violence, it came off as the cast romanticizing or trivializing it, especially when they are marketing it with florals and Blake's hair care products and her cringe, prevaricating jokes. Regardless of what Justin did or didn't do, the idea of marketing this film as a lighthearted and about florals was stupid, craven, disingenuous, and would have never flown with the fans of this book, which is why the backlash to that particular approach was so massive. They also gave similar backlash to the exploitative author trying to sell a coloring book based on this very serious topic. She literally had to apologize and cancel the coloring book. Blake's backlash has absolutely zero to do with the fact that Justin Baldoni may or may not have exploited the cast's stupidity by going behind their backs and marketing the film in the only truly appropriate manner. He may be cunning, but it doesn't change the fact that they were idiotic. That brings me to my next point. There is positively nothing Blake can do or say to excuse her behavior in these two clips in the very least. They are both indicative of who she truly is and how she treats people behind the scenes when she doesn't have a sexual harassment complaint to leverage in a bid to gaslight the public out of realizing how gross and privileged and cruel she has behaved at times. Nothing Justin and his diabolical publicist did or didn't do can account for Blake's behavior in making light of this question and therefore being dismissive of survivors of DV or people currently experiencing it who may have wanted to approach her about their experiences or how they related to this movie.
Most of us, if we're lucky enough to run into a celebrity in public, we only have a few moments to maybe speak with you guys. But for people who see this movie, who relate to the topics of this movie on a deeply personal level, they're really going to want to talk to you. This movie is going to affect people and they're going to want to tell you about their life. So if someone understands the themes of this movie, comes across you in public, and they want to really talk to you, what's the best way for them to be able to talk to you about this? How would you recommend they go about it?
Like asking for like my address or my phone number or like my location share. Or I could just location share you and then we could
And let's be honest here, her behavior in this clip was not an agreed upon marketing strategy by anyone. On what planet would this have been the game plan for marketing this movie? Her behavior in this clip was a PR disaster waiting to happen, which is why she is having such a hard time coping with her downfall, because it was self-inflicted, as much as she would like to use an alleged uncomfortable set environment as a scapegoat right now. Blake's behavior in this clip is the response of an uber privileged dipshit who has never had to think for herself or answer tough questions about tough things if she ever chose she simply didn't want to. When it came to having an authentic moment, or at the very least showing herself to even be receptive of fans approaching her about the serious subject matter of this film, she joked about it in an abhorrent, immature way to discourage fans from ever daring to approach her to discuss this topic. She wanted the glamour and the praise and to be seen as a feminist icon for taking this role, and of course wanted the money and the producer credit for exploiting this sensitive subject matter, but none of the responsibility for bearing any of its weight. Domestic violence is a serious issue that should never be made light of, regardless of Justin Baldoni's alleged inappropriate behavior on set, which has yet to be proven or corroborated on any level by other people on this project. If it is proven that Blake was indeed harassed on the set of this film, then Justin Baldoni should be held accountable to the highest extent of the law, because his alleged behavior is indefensible and revolting and should not be tolerated for a second, especially not in a professional workplace. And if it turns out that his publicists were plotting against Blake in retaliation for her on-set complaints like she claims, and not as a result of her starting the PR war by leaking negative stories about Justin first, then they should be equally condemned for seeking to intimidate and silence a victim of sexual harassment, which simply cannot stand. However, as of right now, all we know is Blake's perspective and the leaked text from Justin's team. It has yet to be seen how Justin will refute her claims in specific, and what counterclaims he will bring to the table in his countersuit, including proof of his allegations that Blake's team started the smear campaign first. We also need to wait and hear specifically how Justin responds to the sexual harassment allegations. This all has yet to be hashed out. Obviously, we haven't heard the end of the situation, and I eagerly await Justin's response and whether he will admit guilt or be able to effectively defend himself.